So we actually did all the testing for this video before the 20 series was announced, and we thought we would have had to scrap it all because the 20 series was going to make everything obsolete and make this test comparison completely worthless. But as we've talked about in previous videos, that's not at all the case. The 10 series is still very much alive and well, especially with used pricing. It falls very much in line under the new 20 series, especially the 2070. And without the rest of the lineup being yet announced, the 1060 can still be a go-to card. But then the 580, is it still relevant? Because that's what AMD has to offer right now, and it doesn't look like they're going to be changing anytime soon. So we have the comparison between the 1066 gig and the 580 8 gig model tested here. Also, the 4 gig would potentially work for your comparison reasons. 1063 gig notwithstanding, because it's just an overall worse card and shouldn't be considered. So let's compare them and talk about how they did and which one you should buy, even with the 20 series now being out. But before we dive into all the testing, I want to let you know that this video is brought to you by Honey. No, not that kind of Honey. Honey is an app that you install on your web browser so that you can save money from all across the internet. So Honey is a free shopping tool, completely free, that automatically scans the internet for the best promo codes that you can get whenever you buy something from one of many major retailers. They believe that everyone deserves the lowest prices possible on all the things that you love, so that's why it works with over 30,000 sites, including Amazon, eBay, Walmart, Best Buy, Newegg, GameStop, Razer, wherever you're gonna be buying PC stuff, games, doesn't matter, Honey works there. Recently, it just so happens that I was looking for a 4K HDR TV for my mother-in-law on Best Buy, and happened to peruse the fact that TCL has decent pricing on them. But then look at checkout, Honey was able to save me an extra $32 off of an already $320 TV. So they knocked 10% off of the total price so that I can get my mother-in-law a decent birthday present. Honey is super easy to install, barely an inconvenience. If you head on to joinhoney.com/UFDtech, it only takes 2 clicks to install into your web browser, and then you're ready to off to the races, get ready to save some money. Of the 10 million people who use Honey, they save an average of $28.61 a month, and they have over 100,000 plus 5-star reviews. There's literally no reason not to add Honey to your web browser today. It's free to use and installs in just 2 clicks, so get Honey for free at joinhoney.com/UFDtech. Again, that's joinhoney.com/UFDtech. Link for that will be pinned at the top comment as well as in the video description. And now let's jump into all the information. So we did testing across a wide variety of games, some games that were available at launch between the 2 cards and some games that have recently come out, and the performance numbers are nearly what you would expect. There are a few games that have swung in the direction of the 1060 where they originally were on AMD's side, and vice versa. So in Ashes of the Singularity DX11, the 1060 wins pretty handedly, 77 FPS to 68, and this is one of the titles where NVIDIA may or may not have convinced the developer to gimp the AMD performance. But in DX12, we do see that the 580 comes back and runs at 73 FPS versus the 1060 74. In Metro Last Light, we have a win for the 1060 yet again of 116 versus 113 FPS, but at that point, it's basically all the same. Deus Ex Mankind Divided in DX11, the 580 handedly wins with 75 FPS versus the 1060 63, and in DX12, it's the same scenario, 77 on the 580 side and 64 on the 1060 side. Far Cry 5, 580 wins there, 85 to 81. Rise of the Tomb Raider DX11, they're exactly tied at 98 FPS. The 1% and 0.1% lows, however, do go in the 580 side, with them being much more stable. And for DX12, that is where you see the 580 shine, absolutely destroying the 1060, raising its FPS to 103 versus the 1060's 97. Final Fantasy 15, the 1060 wins 50 to 46. Shadow of War, the 580 wins 84 to 73. Assassin's Creed Origin, 1060 wins 71 to 64. Ghost Recon Wildlands, 75 versus 74 FPS, basically a toss-up, with the 1060 having better 1% and 0.1% lows. Fortnite, the 1060 wins quite considerably, 21 FPS lead, with the 1% and 0.1% lows also having a commanding figure there. In PUBG, they're dead even, with the 1% low going to the 1060, but the 0.1% lows on both of them are exactly the same. Monster Hunter World, the 1060 wins by 1 FPS, and the 1% and 0.1% lows are nearly identical. In The Witcher 3, the 580 with Hairworks off absolutely wrecks it. Technically, wrecks is not the right word. 90 FPS to 85 FPS. Good win there for an NVIDIA game. In Hitman, we have a win from the 580 in both DX11 and DX12, 97 FPS versus the 89 in DX11, 95 versus 86 in DX12. And then for Total War Warhammer 2, The 580 and the 1060 unanimously tie in DX11, and surprisingly, the 1060 wins in DX12, 65 to 61 FPS. So, if you couldn't tell from me reading all of those specs and the charts on the screen, it's a toss-up. They win in some games, they lose in others, and some have, like the 1060 has some games where it destroys the 580, the 580 has some games where it destroys the 1060. Out of all of the 15 games that we tested, the 1060 took wins in 7 of them, and the 580 beat the 1060 in 5 of the games, with the rest of them going to ties. The games that the cards tied in DX11 would be Warhammer 2, PUBG, and Rise of the Tomb Raider. If you switch those to DX12, the 1060 wins in Warhammer 2, the 580 wins in Rise of the Tomb Raider. In 90% of the cases where the cards lost to one another, it was rarely more than 10% difference between the two cards, and usually at a frame rate that most people wouldn't play, they both could still get 60 FPS in those games. The biggest difference that we saw was in Fortnite, with the 1060 taking the win by 20 FPS, but again, that is such a variable game to benchmark because it's completely online. We don't have the PvE version of the game, we only have the PvP, so there could be huge variability that would lower that to maybe 10 FPS if the games were played differently with different guns and different battles. It's so hard to say, but even so, both cards are still over 100 FPS there. It doesn't exactly seem like AMD's fine wine argument is holding up this far into the product cycle of the 580. It could potentially work out a little later down the line that the 1060 might slow down versus the 580. At this point, they go blow for blow in nearly every game that we could possibly test, even in the newer titles. So it's a huge toss-up, which brings us to pricing, and one of the reasons why we still think that this comparison is even relevant. Basically, the best price that we can find on a 1066 gig new right now, or roughly average selling price, is its MSRP of $269.99. The best selling price that we can find on the 588 gig, however, is $230, which is also its MSRP. So both cards appear to be going for at least MSRP right now on the open new market. On the used market, however, we're seeing the 588 gig for going as low as $185, which is quite considerably a lot lower than what you can get the 1060 used for, which is $200. So it seems like the mining craze has died quite a bit. People are flooding the used markets with their 580s. They're selling them for well below what they bought them for, and we're seeing them come down in price more than the 1060 is right now. Words. At that point, both new and used, with the cards going blow for blow between each other, the 580 is the obvious choice as for which card you should pick up. The 1060 Ti, also known as the 1066 gig, just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense at its price point. You can get a 588 gig for about $30 to $40 cheaper, and you would get basically the same performance, if not better, in most of the games that you're gonna play in either scenario. Obviously, there are games where the 1060 had the upper hand, and if those are your preferred games and you're willing to pay nearly 10 to 20% more for it, go ahead. That's obviously your prerogative, but as overall best winner, which card should you get? It's currently the RX 588 gig. It kind of wins hands down in my opinion. However, if you can find a good deal on a 1060, I would say pick that up if it's a lower price than what you can see a 580 going for. Basically, the conclusion comes down to the same one that we made in this video a year ago, over a year ago, just under a year ago, which basically was get whichever one's cheaper. There's no better card here. They're exactly the same in performance. There is the argument that potentially the 580 could age better than the 1060. We're not currently seeing that. It could be the case a couple of years down the line. However, as it stands right now, they're nearly equal in gaming performance. However, with the 580's current pricing structure, it is the card to buy. It wins our testing hands down as far as which one we would recommend, even in the era of the current RTX 20 series cards. Unless the new 2060 and 2050 cards drop sometime soon, these are still relatively decent buys given the current market. We don't have a whole lot of indication on when the new NVIDIA cards will drop, the 2060 and 2050 that is, so I can't really say whether or not you should hold out and how much longer you would have to wait or anything of the sort. But as it stands currently, as this video is being released, pick up a 580, you probably can't be sad with it. And we just want to give a big thanks to Wootware for sending both of these cards over to us, the XFX 580 and the Palette 1066 gig Jetstream. They're both phenomenal cards as far as like how well they perform in their respective classes. And don't forget that this video was brought to you by joinhoney.com/UFD Tech. If you're trying to save money anywhere on the internet, whether it be Newegg, Best Buy, GameStop, Amazon, Walmart, lists go on and on. Join honey.com/UFD Tech can help you save a little bit of cash across the internet. So check out that in the video description, and hopefully they can save you some money on some graphics cards maybe. Check it out. And that's gonna wrap up this video for me. What do you guys think of this comparison? Do you have a 1060? Do you have a 580? Did you choose one under the over because of certain games? Or do you just prefer red versus green team? Let me know down in the comments below. Keen to hear what your thoughts are, but don't forget to hit the like button. If you enjoyed the video, please get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech related content. I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel, and I'll see your smiling faces again in the next video. Love you too.